Before the lights, before the headlines, there was just a boy, a ball, and a dream too big for the streets that raced him. This is not the story of a god, it is the story of what brilliance looks like when it burns bright, but never quite touches the sky. Before Neymar Jr. was a global icon, before the Champions League nights, the World Cup heartbreaks, the world record transfer fees, there was just a boy barefoot on the hot concrete of Praia Grande, where the sun beat down on the worn rooftops and the smell of sea salt drifted in from the Atlantic. A boy with the ball at his feet and a spark in his soul. Born on February 5th, 1992, in Mogi das Cruzes, São Paulo, Neymar da Silva Santos Jr. arrived in a country that lived and breathed football. Brazil wasn't just a nation of football, it was built on it. From the favelas to the beaches, the game was woven into its culture, and its people knew how to spot a star early. Even before his name echoed through stadiums and across continents, those closest to Neymar sensed something different about him. Not just talent, but intention, rhythm, imagination. His parents, Neymar Sr. and Nadine, came from humble beginnings. His father had played football professionally, though modestly, never reaching the heights he'd once hoped for. Injuries curtailed his progress, and life brought him down from the dream into reality. Still, he held on to his love for the game, and when his son began kicking a ball around the apartment as a toddler, that spark reignited. Neymar Sr. began to believe that maybe, just maybe, his son could carry the dream forward. When Neymar was 4, the family moved to São Vicente, and soon after to Praia Grande, coastal towns where life was not easy, but community was strong. They lived in tight quarters, sometimes in homes without steady electricity, often calculating every real to get through the week. Neymar shared a bed with his sister, Rafaela, and the family's modest living space was filled more with love and laughter than material wealth. His mother, Nadine, worked tirelessly, ensuring meals were on the table and her children were cared for. Despite the challenges, Neymar was always smiling. His energy was magnetic. He would play for hours in the street, on the beach, anywhere he could find space and an object to kick. It didn't have to be a real football. A crushed soda bottle or rolled up sock would do. From the earliest age, his ball control was astounding. He wasn't just kicking for fun. He was experimenting, inventing, dancing with the object like it was alive. Neymar's family quickly realized this wasn't just play, it was purpose. His father became more involved, creating a disciplined routine, helping him train, feeding his love for the game. Neymar Sr. began managing his son's early football trajectory, attending every game, arranging local opportunities, and watching with pride as his son drew crowds even in elementary school tournaments. By age 7, Neymar joined his first futsal team. The indoor version of football, played on smaller courts with a heavier ball, was the perfect breeding ground for flair, speed, and close control. Futsal sharpened Neymar's natural gifts. In tight spaces, he thrived. He'd receive the ball and twist through defenders, like wind through a maze. Watching him play, it felt as though the game slowed down around him while he moved at full speed. But futsal wasn't just a game to Neymar, it was a workshop for imagination. The cramped courts, the slick floors, the echo of the ball ricocheting off concrete walls, it all created a different kind of rhythm. In that confined chaos, he learned to improvise, to disguise his next move, to make space where none existed. He would bounce the ball off walls deliberately, using rebounds like second teammates. He would feint with only a shoulder dip, drawing defenders, and escape with a flick no one saw coming. Where others looked rushed, Neymar seemed at home, calm inside the storm. Futsal became more than training, it was a philosophy. In Brazil, flair wasn't excess, it was survival. And Neymar absorbed that culture like breath. He didn't just emulate his idols, he extended their language. In every goal, every spin, every no look pass, he was carving out a new dialect of Brazilian football, written in joy, spontaneity, and rhythm. He became a local sensation. Parents of opposing players would ask about him. Coaches would pull Neymar's father aside, wide eyed and impressed. At times, referees asked to verify his age. Such was his dominance that many couldn't believe he was playing fairly within his group. And always, Neymar played with a grin. He celebrated with dances, pointed to the sky. He became a local sensation. Parents of opposing players would ask about him. Coaches would pull Neymar's father aside, wide eyed and impressed. At times, referees asked to verify his age. Such was his dominance that many couldn't believe he was playing fairly within his group. And always, Neymar played with a grin. He celebrated with dances, pointed to the sky, mimicked his idols, and began carving out his identity, not just as a player, but as a performer. His family's financial struggles never fully disappeared. There were times when the electricity was cut off, when food was scarce, when moving between houses became a necessity. But Neymar's progress offered hope. Small sponsorships from local businesses began to come in. His futsal clubs helped support his travel, and all the while Neymar Sr. stood firm, shielding his son from distractions, bad deals, and early exploitation. At 11 years old, Neymar joined Portuguesa Santista, a more structured youth club where his skills were honed further. Here, he met tougher opponents, faced more organized systems, and yet continued to excel. The club gave him greater visibility, and with that came interest from scouts. It was during this period that Real Madrid came knocking. A trial was arranged. Neymar traveled to Spain with his father, stepping into the vast training grounds of Valdebebas. He trained with kids from all over the world, many of them already part of elite European pipelines. Neymar dazzled. The coaches were thrilled. The club wanted him. But the deal didn't feel right. He was still just a child in a foreign land, surrounded by a culture and language he didn't yet understand. The family declined the offer. That decision proved pivotal. It brought him back to Brazil, back to Santos FC, the legendary club where Pelé himself had made history. For Neymar, Santos was more than just a club, it was a symbol, a bridge between the past and the future. The white shirt with the black trim carried weight, and Neymar wore it like armor. He entered Santos's youth academy in 2003. He was 11. From the beginning, he was treated like someone special. The coaches gave him space to express himself. They didn't box him into a system or dull his flair. Instead, they encouraged the improvisation, the sudden feints, the audacious goals. They saw what was coming, even if the rest of the world hadn't yet noticed. Neymar's days at the academy were a blur of early mornings, long commutes, afternoon training sessions, and late-night homework. His father often drove him back and forth between home and training, navigating the gridlocked Sao Paulo traffic for hours just to keep the dream alive. His mother continued holding the household together. His sister remained his confidant and supporter. Every member of the family played a role in building the foundation beneath his feet. At Santos, Neymar rose quickly through the youth ranks. He played above his age group, dominating with ease. His growth wasn't just technical, it was mental. He began to understand space, tempo, decision making. He developed the awareness to know when to beat a man and when to release the pass. He grew leaner but stronger. His touch became silkier. His reputation grew. At age 13, he signed his first professional youth contract with Santos. It came with a small salary and benefits for the family, including help with housing and financial stability. For the first time, football was paying back the sacrifices. The Santos badge became part of Neymar's identity. He wore it proudly, kissed it after goals, spoke with reverence about the club in interviews, even at a young age. Meanwhile, the pressure started to build. Expectations were no longer whispered, they were shouted. The media had caught on. Video clips of his goals and tricks circulated on early internet forums. Scouts from Europe resumed their interest. Nike came calling. With a sponsorship deal before he had even debuted for the senior team, the comparisons began, first to Robinho, then to Ronaldinho, then to Pelé himself. It was an impossible lineage, and yet Neymar seemed unfazed. Even at 15, he carried himself with an ease that belied his age. He still spent time with his friends from the neighborhood. He played video games, danced, laughed, stayed up too late. But when he stepped onto the pitch, he transformed. Every movement was purposeful. Every touch seemed to hum with potential energy. At school, he remained quiet, focused. Some teachers noted that he often doodled football tactics in the margins of his notebooks. He was polite, respectful, but his mind was always on the game. Not just playing it, living it. By the time he was 16, Neymar was already training with the Santos first team. He was no longer just a prodigy, he was a phenomenon waiting to be unboxed. The senior squad of Santos FC was sacred ground. Legends had stood on this turf. Icons whose names still rang like hymns through the corridors of Brazilian football. For Neymar, now 16, it was a glimpse into the future he had long imagined in solitude, behind the gates of youth academies and dusty futsal courts. He trained with the first team in quiet awe. Here were professionals he had grown up watching on television, now alongside him, sharing drills, passing sequences, and jokes between sprints. But Neymar wasn't just there to learn. He was already dazzling. Even seasoned defenders found themselves chasing shadows when he weaved between cones or fired shots from tight angles. There was no intimidation in his step. He didn't shrink in the face of pressure. If anything, he fed off it. Coaches at Santos began whispering what many already suspected. This boy wasn't just good, he was different. The press got wind of it too. Journalists began attending training sessions just to catch a glimpse of him. They watched as he floated across the pitch, his signature low center of gravity and rapid acceleration impossible to ignore. The comparisons to Pelé grew louder, unfair perhaps, but inevitable in the crucible of Brazilian football, where every prodigy bore the weight of the past. The club debated his readiness. Was it too soon to expose him to the intensity of the top flight? Would defenders target him? Could his lean frame withstand the brutality of the professional game? But Neymar wasn't asking to be sheltered. He was asking for the ball. On March 7, 2009, the moment arrived. In a Campeonato Paulista match against Oeste, Neymar was subbed on. He was just 17. The stadium buzzed with anticipation. For those who had tracked his rise from the youth teams, it felt inevitable. For the wider public, it was an introduction to something rare. He didn't score that day, but he left a mark. His touches were confident, daring. He completed dribbles. He demanded the ball. He played without fear. And from that moment on, Santos fans knew something special had begun. Just a week later, Neymar scored his first professional goal, an elegant finish against Moji Meriam. The crowd erupted. His teammates surrounded him, and in that instant, a boy who had grown up idolizing Romario, Ronaldinho, and Robinho had now etched his own name into the story. The goals didn't stop. That season, Neymar scored 14 times in 48 games. But it wasn't just the numbers, it was how he did it. He lobbed keepers from impossible angles. He danced through defenders like breeze through leaves. He nutmegged with impunity, sprinted with grace, and celebrated with the purest joy. By 2010, he had become the centerpiece of Santos. Barely 18, he led the club to the Campeonato Paulista title, scoring freely and thrilling fans with each outing. That same year, he scored 5 goals in a single Copa do Brasil match against Guarani. The buzz became deafening. His playing style was infectious, built on spontaneity, instinct, and joy. He was unafraid to try the audacious. He brought flair back to the forefront in a footballing world increasingly obsessed with structure and efficiency. Fans across Brazil were falling in love again with a style, with a spirit, with a young man who played as if dancing. Yet, for all his brilliance, controversy found its way in. In a match later that year, after refusing to take instructions from his coach and showing frustration on the field, Neymar was criticized by pundits and even temporarily suspended. Critics called him immature, arrogant, a diva in the making. But others saw it differently. A teenager overwhelmed by expectation, under pressure to deliver magic every time he touched the ball. Santos stood by him, his teammates too. The club fined him, then handed him more responsibility. It was a lesson, not in humility alone, but in leadership. He learned quickly, adapted, grew. By the end of the 2010 season, Neymar had scored 42 goals in 60 matches. He was named the best player in the Campeonato Paulista. He won the Bola de Prata, and he was still only 18. European clubs had taken notice. Chelsea made an offer. So did Real Madrid. Even Barcelona had begun to circle. But Neymar stayed. Not just for money, though Santos did restructure his contract to keep him. He stayed because Brazil wasn't finished with him yet, and neither was he with it. In 2011, he would reach a new pinnacle, leading Santos to their first Copa Libertadores title since Pelé's reign in 1963. It was more than a trophy, it was a coronation. The tournament run was dramatic, intense, and at times brutal. Neymar scored decisive goals, assisted in key moments, and shouldered pressure with growing maturity. In the final against Peñarol, he scored the opening goal, breaking through the defense with composure, beyond his years and finishing with his left foot. A clean strike that sent Villa Belmiro into rapture. After the final whistle, he wept, tears of joy, of release, of validation. At just 19, he had delivered Santos its most coveted prize. He wasn't just a rising star anymore. He was the face of Brazilian football. Later that year, he would score one of the most famous goals of his career, a solo masterpiece against Flamengo, where he collected the ball near the halfway line, dribbled past three defenders, faked out the keeper, and slotted it home. The goal won him the FIFA Puskás Award for the best goal of the year. It wasn't just beautiful, it was breathtaking, a reminder that magic was still alive in football. Off the pitch, Neymar began to shape his image. The mohawk became iconic. His dances, his celebrations, his sense of humor in interviews, all of it added to his persona. He was not only a player, he was a symbol of joy, creativity, and self-expression. Children across Brazil mimicked his hair, his tricks, his poses. He had become a cultural force. Endorsements followed: Nike, Panasonic, Red Bull. Brands saw in him the perfect blend of youth and charisma. Critics warned of overexposure, of distractions, of losing focus. But Neymar kept scoring, kept smiling, kept building. His relationship with the national team, though, had been more complex. He had not been included in Brazil's 2010 World Cup squad, despite massive public support and media pressure. Then coach Dunga had cited inexperience. For Neymar, it was a sting, but rather than sulk, he used it as fuel. He redoubled his efforts. By the time Mano Menezes took over, Neymar was front and center. He made his Brazil senior debut on August 10, 2010, against the United States. In the 28th minute, he scored, rising to meet a cross and nodding it into the net. He pointed to the sky and celebrated with tears in his eyes. A boyhood dream had been fulfilled. With each international cap, he grew into the role. Brazil was searching for a new talisman, and Neymar's shoulders, slight though they were, began to carry that burden. He wore the number 11 shirt with pride, the same number as his idol Romario. Later, he would inherit the number 10, and with it, the expectations that came with it. Back at Santos, his final years were a blur of goals, trophies, and speculation. Would he leave? When? Where to? But he stayed longer than most expected, until 2013. Neymar remained in Brazil, choosing to continue writing his story at home while the world waited. When he finally left for Barcelona, the moment was bittersweet. He cried during his farewell press conference. So did the fans. But there was no doubt. His time at Santos had carved him into something greater than just a talent. He had become a symbol of hope, of Brazilian swagger reborn, of the kid from Praia Grande who danced with a ball until the world had no choice but to watch. And through it all, Neymar never forgot where it started. In quiet moments, before matches, after victories, in airports or hotel rooms far from home, his mind would drift back to Praia Grande, to the smell of home-cooked rice, to the sound of waves in the distance, to the dusty ball bouncing down an uneven alley, and a younger version of himself chasing after it, with wide eyes and no clue how far those feet would carry him. He would remember his father's words, firm yet gentle. Play with joy, always with joy. He would remember the sacrifices his mother made silently, without ever asking for credit. And he would carry those memories onto every pitch, tucked beneath his jersey, stitched into the fabric of who he was. Because before the fame, before the billions of eyes, before the pressure of an entire nation, Neymar was just a boy who loved the game. And that boy still lived inside him, quietly, humbly, beautifully. The Barcelona Dream. There are dreams you sleep through and dreams you step into. Neymar didn't just dream of Barcelona, he became it. He walked into the Camp Nou not as a boy chasing greatness, but as a prodigy already anointed. He was Brazil's new crown jewel, and Barcelona, this sacred cathedral of football, had offered him a throne beside kings. But thrones are never unshared. And as Neymar crossed the Atlantic, he stepped not just into La Liga, but into the orbit of a god. The transfer saga. For 2 years, Europe had circled him. From 2011 to 2013, Neymar was the most wanted footballer on earth. Chelsea made the first serious move in 2010, only to be turned down. Real Madrid offered bigger money. Bayern, Manchester City, and Juventus all tried. But Neymar, guided by his father and a carefully assembled inner circle, waited. In the end, it wasn't the money that lured him, it was the idea, the football. In 2013, Neymar chose Barcelona. It was the club of Ronaldinho, the man who made him fall in love with the game. It was where Xavi and Iniesta turned space into poetry. It was home to Lionel Messi, the silent wizard already carving his name into the stars. Neymar's departure from Santos was emotional. Tears flowed in the dressing room. Fans cried at the airport. He had promised to bring continental glory back, and he had. But the call of destiny was louder than nostalgia. The transfer was announced with a smile, a handshake, and a promise. What followed, however, was anything but smooth. Barcelona declared the fee as 57 million euros, but later investigations revealed the actual cost exceeded 86 million euros. The discrepancy sparked lawsuits, resignations, and court dates. Even club president Sandro Rosell stepped down amid the controversy. But for fans, numbers faded. All that mattered was what Neymar would bring with his feet. The arrival. He was unveiled at the Camp Nou in front of 56,500 fans, a record for a Brazilian signing. He wore the iconic red and blue stripes. He juggled the ball with ease. He waved, laughed, posed. Behind the charm, though, was a quiet tension. Could he thrive in Europe's most demanding environment? Could he survive the tactical weight of La Liga? Could he coexist or compete with Messi? His first season was one of adaptation. The pitches were slicker, the pressure louder, the defenders colder. He struggled at times with the tempo. He was fouled relentlessly, his slight frame tested, but his joy never faded. Off the pitch, he bonded with Dani Alves, a fellow Brazilian and mentor. He learned Spanish quickly. He embraced the Catalan culture, the team-first ethos, the unspoken rule, let Messi lead. And slowly, he began to shine. 3. Finding space with Messi. From the beginning, the football world waited for friction, a clash of egos, a power struggle. 2 stars, one spotlight. But it never came. Messi welcomed Neymar, not as a threat, but as a brother. He passed to him, defended him, praised him. In training, they clicked. In matches, they began to sync. Neymar, still only 21, deferred. He played on the left. He passed when he might have shot. He celebrated Messi's goals with unfiltered joy. And in return, Messi shared the weight. This was not rivalry. This was rhythm. 4. The birth of MSN. In 2014, another fire was added to the mix. Luis Suarez, banned for biting during the World Cup, arrived from Liverpool. A volatile genius, ruthless, explosive. At first, eyebrows raised. 3 alphas, 1 ball. But then, the unexpected happened. Messi, Suarez, and Neymar became MSN, a trio not of ego, but of chemistry. They joked in the dressing room, shared dinners, danced after goals. They laughed more than they fought, and on the pitch, they destroyed. Neymar was the glue, the joy, the flair, the samba between the steel. 5. The treble season, 2014-15. That season, Barcelona won everything. But it didn't start with trophies. It started with a crisis. On January 4th, 2015, Barcelona lost 1-0 to Real Sociedad. Luis Enrique made a controversial decision. He benched both Messi and Neymar. The match was disjointed, lifeless. Barcelona looked dull without their stars, and the dressing room post-match was tense. Messi didn't turn up for open training the next day. Rumors of a rift with Luis Enrique flooded the Spanish press. There were even whispers he might leave, that the club was fracturing. From that point on, Barcelona went on a ruthless tear. Neymar scored in both legs of the Champions League quarterfinal versus PSG. He netted again in the semis versus Bayern, including a sublime goal at the Allianz. In La Liga, he formed a devastating 1-2 punch with Suarez on the left. By season's end, he had scored 39 goals in all competitions. Barcelona won La Liga, Copa del Rey, with Neymar scoring in the final versus Athletic Bilbao. Champions League, Neymar sealed the 3-1 win over Juventus with the last goal deep into stoppage time. It wasn't just a treble. It was one of the most visually stunning seasons of football ever witnessed. MSN ended the year with 122 goals combined, the most ever by an attacking trio at the time. And Neymar, still just 23, had conquered Europe. The football itself. In those years, Neymar played football that felt unreal. His dribbling was impossibly elastic. He would stop on a dime, flick, shimmy, accelerate, like watching music with your eyes. There was the solo goal versus Villarreal, the sombrero flick over a defender before finishing with a calm volley. There was the assist to Messi versus Bayern, threaded with surgical vision through 4 defenders. He played with invention, with joy, with no fear of failure. Even defenders who hated his style, the showboating, the risk, could not deny the effectiveness. He wasn't a luxury player. He was a weapon. The recognition. That year, he was nominated for the Ballon d'Or. He finished third, behind Messi and Ronaldo, but the message was clear. The throne would one day be his. Pundits said he was next, that when Messi and Ronaldo declined, Neymar would rise. Brazil saw him not just as an heir to Pelé, but as the bridge between the old and the eternal. And yet, beneath the triumph, seeds of unrest began to grow. For a time, it felt like football had solved itself, not in a cold mathematical way, but in the way stars align, accidentally perfect, briefly infinite. That was MSN. 3 men, 3 nations, 3 histories. And yet, when they moved, it felt like one organism. Suarez the hammer, Messi the mind, Neymar the flame. They didn't just play together, they anticipated. Each understood the breath of the others, the hesitations, the glances, the heartbeat of movement before movement began. In a game so often scripted by tactics, they were jazz, improvisational, unrepeatable, unfair. And Neymar, far from being the third wheel, was the spark that let the other two combust. When he dropped deep, Messi moved wider. When he accelerated, Suarez peeled off. When defenders surrounded one, the other two devoured the space. It wasn't balance, it was overload. Defenders didn't sleep a night before facing Barcelona. They didn't strategize, they hoped. And Neymar, in those 2 years after the treble, was approaching something few achieve. Number 7B. It's easy to remember the treble season, but what Neymar did after in 2015-16 and 2016-17 might have been even better. He became more than a dancer, more than an entertainer. He became inevitable. In 2015-16, he scored 31 goals and assisted 20 more across all competitions. He was the heartbeat of matches where Messi sat out, the leader when Suarez tired, the answer when games turned gray. Against Villarreal, he scored a goal so audacious it felt like satire, a backflick over a defender, followed by a cushioned volley into the net. In El Clásicos, he was fearless. He dribbled at Ramos like he wasn't there. He nutmegged Carvajal just because he could. He wasn't just shining under Messi's light anymore. He was generating his own. By 2016-17, the final MSN season, Neymar's role had matured. He was deeper, more creative. No longer just the scorer, but the engine behind movement. More assists, more link-ups, more gravity. And then, there was Paris. The remontada. If Neymar had one match to preserve in a time capsule, it would be March 8, 2017. Barcelona versus PSG. Round of 16, Champions League. First leg, 0-4, humiliation, elimination all but confirmed. No team had ever overturned a 4-goal deficit. But in the second leg, under the Camp Nou lights, something metaphysical happened. Barcelona surged to 3-0. Then, PSG scored. An away goal, 3-1. Game over again, or so it seemed. But Neymar decided otherwise. In the final minutes, he scored a stunning free kick into the top corner, then won a penalty and converted it. 5-1, still not enough. Then, with literal seconds left, he floated a perfect ball into the box. And Sergi Roberto made it, 6-1. Barcelona advanced. The stadium exploded. The football world convulsed. But in the ashes of that miracle, one truth remained. That was Neymar's night, not Messi's, not Suarez's. His. He was the architect, the finisher, the heartbeat, the fire. And in that glorious, impossible comeback, he tasted what it felt like to be the reason, not just part of the magic, but the one who conjured it. 7D, the shadow that never lifted. But even in triumph, shadows lingered. Neymar had outshone everyone that night, but the headlines still found Messi's name first. The photo on the front page? Messi, fists raised on the advertising boards. Neymar smiled in the background as always. It wasn't bitterness, it was a pattern. Every crescendo filtered through another's silhouette. And slowly, a question grew louder in his heart. Will I ever be more than brilliant in someone else's story? Because Barcelona was Messi's novel, and Neymar, no matter how dazzling, was a chapter. His family knew it, his father knew it, even Messi perhaps knew it. And while the bond between them remained pure, the dreams inside Neymar began to shift. 7E pressure in the paradise. To the outside world, it all seemed golden. Trophies, laughter, goal tallies that defied belief. But behind the curtain, things began to fray. Neymar's entourage grew. Friends, advisors, brand reps. His celebrity life expanded. Photo shoots, fashion events, whispers of distractions. The Spanish media, once enchanted, turned sharper. He was too flashy, too soft, too theatrical. Criticism grew, especially when he got injured before big matches, especially when he rolled on the ground too long, especially when the smile looked forced. And inside the club, friction brewed. The board delayed contract renewals. Tax investigations lingered. His father clashed with executives over payments and image rights. And perhaps most importantly, he no longer felt essential, no longer the kid. In 2013, Neymar arrived in Messi's shadow with reverence. But by 2017, he was 25, an Olympic gold medalist, a Champions League winner, one of the three best players on earth. He had grown, not just in skill, but in certainty. And the longer he stayed at Barcelona, the more he felt like a passenger on someone else's train. The public still treated him like the apprentice. The board still prioritized Messi's needs. And Neymar? He no longer dreamed of following greatness. He dreamed of owning it. A crown of his own. The move to PSG wasn't about money, at least not in Neymar's mind. It was about control, about becoming the face, the captain, the first name on every sheet, about proving to the world, to Brazil, to himself, that he could lead. Because deep down, he didn't just want to be remembered as a genius, he wanted to be remembered as the genius. And Barcelona, for all its glory, would never let him be that. Not while Messi still played. Not while the system bent toward another son. And so he made the hardest decision of his career. To leave magic in pursuit of something else entirely. Ownership. The fame and the flame. With success came celebrity. Neymar became a global icon. He launched a fashion line, appeared in music videos, befriended Justin Bieber, Lewis Hamilton, Drake, hosted parties, posted dances, smiled for every camera. He wasn't just a footballer. He was a pop star. Some loved it. Others warned, the focus is drifting. Neymar was not Messi. He was not Suarez. He was something else. He didn't play with Messi's calm, nor with Suarez's aggression. He played with elastic rebellion. You couldn't predict him. He wasn't built for control. He was built for chaos. Even his flaws, the dives, the dramatics, the flicks that went too far, were part of the package. He didn't want to be efficient. He wanted to be unforgettable. And in those years, he was. The illusion of forever. From the outside, it looked perfect. Barcelona adored him. He was winning, laughing, flying. But inside Neymar's camp, a new ambition stirred. He wanted to win the Ballon d'Or. He wanted to be the face, not just the foil. He wanted to step out of Messi's shadow, gently, respectfully, but decisively. Barcelona's structure didn't allow that, not yet, not fully. There were also growing issues with the club board. Contract delays, image rights disputes, frustrations with media treatment. The tax case continued to haunt his name. And when PSG came calling in 2017, offering the chance to be the main man, to lead a new project, to break free, the dream began to fracture. Closing the curtain. Neymar never fought with Messi. He never soured on the club. But the storyline was changing. Barcelona would always belong to Messi, and Neymar, even at his best, was a guest in someone else's kingdom. So even as he scored goals, lifted trophies, and dazzled, he was already looking toward something else. Not out of selfishness, but out of a need to grow. And that need would take him somewhere no one expected. Final image. The Champions League final in Berlin. Confetti falls. Messi lifts the trophy. Neymar kisses it. Suarez roars. The trio, at their peak, unstoppable, joyful, timeless. But somewhere behind Neymar's smile, a whisper already stirs. This chapter is over. Life beneath the sun. There is a gravity to greatness, and in Barcelona, that gravity had a name: Lionel Messi. For a boy who had grown up idolizing the Argentine, Neymar's dream was never just to play with him. It was to learn beside him, to create beauty together, to be near the sun. But when no one told him was this: when you orbit too close to the sun, you forget how to shine on your own. 1. The orbit. From the moment Neymar arrived at Barcelona, he belonged. He belonged on the pitch, he belonged in the stadium's echo, he belonged in the poetry of quick passes and impossible angles. But he did not belong in the center. That space was sacred. That space belonged to Messi. Messi didn't demand it. He didn't speak loudly. He never asked to be worshipped. But greatness creates its own silence, and Messi's silence was thunderous. In training, Neymar would watch how the team's rhythm changed when Messi touched the ball. Everything slowed, then surged. Every movement, every gaze unconsciously adjusted to him. It wasn't forced, it was gravitational. Even the most senior players, Iniesta, Pique, Busquets, yielded to his tempo like planets pulled into orbit. Neymar had grown up with Messi as a myth. He knew the legends, the solo run versus Getafe, the hat trick against Madrid, the number 10 sewn into the fabric of the modern game. And now he shared a dressing room with him, trained beside him, passed to him. There was admiration, deep and genuine. But sometimes, when Neymar walked off the pitch after scoring twice, the headlines still read, Barcelona wins with Messi's guidance. Even when Messi hadn't scored, even when Neymar had been the difference, it didn't feel like a betrayal, just a quiet reminder of his place in the story. Loved, but never centered. There was no malice in Messi's dominance, only inevitability. He didn't mean to cast shadows. He just couldn't help shining. And Neymar, beautiful, brilliant, burning to become, began to wonder what that shadow was doing to his own light. A prince in the presence of a king. He would dribble past three defenders. He would score goals no one else dared attempt. He would dance, smile, hug Suarez, point to the heavens. But when the chants rose from the Camp Nou stands, they carried one name, Messi, and Neymar knew it. He knew he was adored, but he also knew he was not Messi, not here. It wasn't envy, it wasn't bitterness. It was something more subtle, more aching, a kind of quiet yearning to be seen not as the complement, but as the source. 3. The glimpses of a successor. There were moments when the sun flickered. In October 2015, Messi suffered a knee injury. He was sidelined for nearly 2 months. In his absence, Neymar rose. He led the team. He danced into the spotlight, not with arrogance, but with intent. Against Villarreal, in one of the most audacious goals of his career, Neymar received the ball at the edge of the box. With a flick of his right boot, he chipped it over the defender's shoulder. He didn't let it bounce. Instead, he swiveled mid-air and volleyed it past the helpless goalkeeper in one seamless, gravity-defying motion. The stadium roared, and for the first time, they roared for him. It was not just a goal, it was a declaration. The media buzzed, headlines proclaimed a new dawn, fans bought Neymar shirts in record numbers, and Neymar, walking down the tunnel that night, smiled, not with boyish joy, but with something deeper, a recognition, a glimpse of what it could mean to lead, to be the name that echoes first. For a moment, the crown hovered, and he wore it well. But then Messi returned, and as he stepped back onto the pitch, the team realigned like a solar system correcting its tilt. Neymar shifted back into rhythm, back into support. He didn't fight it. He didn't complain. But something inside him remembered what it felt like to lead the constellation. not revolve around it. 4. The bond. There was no war between them. Messi and Neymar genuinely cared for each other. They laughed at training, they embraced after goals, they traveled together, celebrated birthdays together, protected each other from critics. Messi once said, "Neymar will be the best in the world after me." And Neymar, even in interviews years later, still calls Messi the best I've ever seen. There was love, but love does not always silence longing. Sometimes it sharpens it. The bridge between fire and ice. Between the quiet genius of Messi and the emotional spark of Neymar stood a third figure, Luis Suarez. The Uruguayan striker became the binding force. He brought Messi out of his shell. He brought Neymar down from the clouds. With Suarez, the trio functioned not as a hierarchy, but as a family. They shared dinners, practical jokes, inside nicknames. And on the pitch, Suarez's selflessness allowed Neymar to fly. But even the strongest chemistry cannot dissolve ambition. And Neymar's ambition was growing louder. Number 6. The media mirror. In Spain, the media alternated between praising Neymar as the future and criticizing him for wanting more. In Brazil, the coverage was different. There, Neymar was already the king, already the captain, already the face of a nation. Back home, people didn't say he plays with Messi. They said, Messi is lucky to play with him. That difference in framing found its way into Neymar's mind. Each international break became a kind of reminder that he wasn't meant to be second, that he wasn't just a supporting act. He was Brazil's story. Number 7. The game beneath the game. On the surface, Neymar's style blossomed. He became more efficient, more team-oriented. He improved defensively. His link-up with Jordi Alba and Iniesta turned left-side attacks into symphonies. But within, something shifted. He stopped smiling as often after goals. He looked frustrated when subbed off. He no longer laughed off media speculation about his future. On the field, he remained world-class, but off it, the restlessness was building. Number 8. The business of belonging. By 2016, Neymar's brand had become bigger than his role. His image rights were worth millions. His Instagram presence rivaled global pop stars. Nike, Gillette, Beats, Red Bull, they all banked on his stardom. But at Barcelona, he was still under Messi's commercial umbrella. The face of the club, the first on posters, the name on top. Neymar wasn't greedy, but he was ambitious. And ambition in football is not just about trophies, it's about ownership of your name. The Whispers of Paris. Rumors began swirling in early 2016. Paris Saint-Germain were preparing a move, a club with unlimited funds, a project built around him. No shadows, no Messi. At first, Neymar laughed it off, called the speculation noise. But then, on quiet nights, the idea began to breathe. He started imagining what it would feel like to be the poster on every wall, the face in every commercial, the name sung first, not beside, not beneath. There was no anger in the thought, just possibility. He pictured walking out at the Parc des Princes, fans chanting only for him, not as a companion to greatness, but as its embodiment. His father spoke with PSG representatives. The numbers were absurd. The vision was clear. Still, Neymar hesitated. He loved Barcelona. He loved the locker room. He loved Messi. But there was a voice, barely audible, growing louder each day. What if I stayed here too long? What if I became too comfortable? What if I never found out what I could be on my own? And that voice was starting to sound like truth. X. The emotional ceiling. Barcelona gave Neymar the best years of his early career. He won the treble, scored in a Champions League final, formed the most lethal trio in history, became beloved by fans around the world. But no matter how brightly he burned, he would never be the sun. Not here. And Neymar didn't want to push Messi out. He loved him. But he also couldn't shrink forever. The choice became clear: stay and serve legacy, or leave and chase your own. 11. The final season's subtle tension. In 2016 to 17, Barcelona began to show cracks. Luis Enrique announced he would step down. The team struggled with consistency. MSN still dazzled, but something felt dimmer. Neymar was brilliant, especially in the famous 6-1 comeback versus PSG, where he scored twice and assisted the final goal. But even that night, something unspoken lingered. It wasn't just about goals anymore. It was about purpose. And after a match at the Camp Nou, Neymar stands by the tunnel. Messi walks beside him. Suarez claps the crowd. The fans chant. Flashbulbs sparkle. Neymar turns, waves, and smiles. But as he walks into the tunnel, he glances over his shoulder, not at the crowd, but at the sky above the stadium, as if wondering, what would it feel like to shine without shade? The Great Escape. There are transfers that shift teams. There are those that reshape leagues. And then there are moments like this, when a single move fractures football itself. In 2017, Neymar da Silva Santos Jr. did not just leave a club, he left a kingdom. He stepped off the world's brightest stage to build one of his own. But some dreams cost more than the sum of money. Some dreams carry weight heavier than gold. 1. The tipping point. The 2016-17 season began with shadows. Luis Enrique had already announced he would step down as manager. Barcelona, despite their talent, lacked consistency. Their identity, once fluid and fearsome, had begun to erode. Madrid were rising, the midfield was aging, and for Neymar, a familiar ache returned. Brilliance without leadership, glory without ownership. Then came the spark that would ignite everything. On March 8th, 2017, in one of the greatest comebacks in Champions League history, Barcelona overturned a 4-0 deficit to defeat Paris Saint-Germain 6-1. And at the center of it all, not Messi, not Suarez, Neymar. He scored the 88th minute free kick, converted the penalty, delivered the assist for the sixth goal, all within 7 breathtaking minutes. It was, by every measure, his masterpiece. And ironically, it was this moment, this peak of Barca brilliance, that convinced PSG they no longer wanted to compete against Neymar. They wanted to build around him. 2. The power and the price. Behind closed doors, discussions began. PSG, backed by Qatar Sports Investments, had identified Neymar as their golden gateway to trophies, to global relevance, to transformation. They weren't offering a transfer fee. They were preparing to trigger the full €222 million release clause in his Barcelona contract. It was a number previously thought to be unthinkable, untouchable. But PSG had no interest in thinking small. Neymar's camp was split. His father, heavily involved in career decisions, leaned toward the move. His advisors pointed to commercial opportunities. His lawyers examined the clause. Barcelona scrambled to hold on. Bartomeu, the president, held urgent meetings. Senior players tried to rally him. Messi reportedly called Neymar personally to convince him to stay. Piqué even posted on social media, "Se queda," he stays. But the tension was already thick. The dressing room was filled with whispers, not of betrayal, but confusion. Was he really going to leave? After everything they'd built, training grew quieter. Cameras circled the gates. Fans shouted questions. Reporters ran daily headlines with new leaks. And Neymar, normally vibrant, expressive, playful, became distant. He didn't make a dramatic announcement. He didn't storm out. But each step felt heavier than the last. 3. The exit that broke Barcelona. The decision, when it came, arrived like thunder. August 2nd, 2017. Neymar informs the club he intends to leave. He walks into training for the last time, says goodbye to teammates in the locker room. There were no cameras, no speeches, just stunned silence. Some players embraced him, others stared through him. A few, it said, were furious, not because he left, but because of how. The club reacted with legal fury. They accused him of acting in bad faith. They filed lawsuits over loyalty bonuses. La Liga initially refused to process the transfer, citing financial fair play concerns. And the fans? They burned shirts. They booed his name. They sprayed his mural with black paint outside the Camp Nou. Only a handful understood. Only a few dared to say he just wanted something of his own. For the first time in over a decade, Barcelona was shaken, not by defeat, but by departure. Neymar wasn't just leaving, he was breaking the ecosystem. 4. The record-breaking transfer. On August 3rd, Neymar became the most expensive footballer in history, 222 million, a figure that stunned economists as much as fans. PSG paid the full release clause in cash via lawyers. UEFA's financial fair play watchdogs scrambled for clarity. Clubs across Europe watched in disbelief. Neymar signed a 5-year deal, earning over 30 million per season. Sponsorships surged, social media exploded, debates raged. Was this ambition? Was it greed? Was it the beginning of the end? One thing was clear. Football's tectonic plates had shifted. Neymar, once a satellite of Messi, now orbited no one. Becoming the main man. Paris unveiled him like a king, was packed. Fans waved Brazilian flags. Cameras flashed like a storm. He walked out in PSG's dark blue, a shy grin on his face. The number 10 shirt was handed to him by Javier Pastore, a symbolic gesture of respect. In his speech, Neymar said, "I needed a new challenge. I wanted more. I wanted to help build history." He smiled wide, but his eyes darted. This was not Camp Nou. There were no familiar voices, no Messi, no Suarez. It was freedom, pure and terrifying. He walked onto the pitch alone, not because he was abandoned, but because this time it was all his. In that moment, Neymar became not just a footballer, he became a project, a kingdom built overnight. He exploded in his first matches. Goals, assists, nutmegs, elastic stepovers, no-look passes. In Ligue 1, he danced. He built instant chemistry with Kylian Mbappe, who had joined shortly after. And though Edinson Cavani was less fluid, the trio began to terrorize defenses. For a while, it looked like Neymar had made the right call. He was the focal point. The media called it Neymar's PSG. He was no longer in the shadow of Messi. He was the sun. The fractures appear. But kingdoms built in a day are rarely built on rock. Tensions surfaced early. In a match against Lyon, Neymar and Cavani argued over who would take a penalty. The cameras caught it. The world watched. Reports followed. Neymar had demanded set-piece priority. He had a private dressing room, special training schedules, influence over signings. The French press turned. What had been admiration became skepticism. Was Neymar a genius or a diva? Was he leading PSG or bending it? Teammates began whispering. Cavani reportedly fumed. Mbappe, still young, walked a diplomatic line. And Neymar? He smiled. But something had changed. Injuries and isolation. In February 2018, Neymar fractured his metatarsal. The timing was cruel. PSG were about to face Real Madrid in the Champions League round of 16, the biggest test of their season, the moment Neymar had come for, and he would watch it from a hospital bed. The injury required surgery. He flew back to Brazil for recovery, alone. Photos emerged of Neymar at his mansion in Mangaratiba, a luxurious isolation. He posted videos of rehab, smiled for cameras, but his absence grew louder than his presence. PSG were eliminated by Madrid. Critics erupted. He's unreliable. He's fragile. He's more influencer than footballer. But few saw the full picture. He trained in silence. He watched the Champions League from afar. The dream he had chased, the freedom, the leadership, now came with stillness, with doubt, with distance. He was richer, more famous, but for the first time in years, he was lonely. Capital 9, the cost of escape. He returned for the domestic season, won Ligue 1, Coupe de France, and Coupe de la Ligue. But the question persisted. Was this why he left? Neymar had traded Camp Nou for Parc des Princes, the roar of El Clasico for the quiet dominance of Ligue 1. He had trophies, but not that one. The Champions League, the Ballon d'Or, the undisputed recognition. Those remained elusive. He had left to become the best, but the world still compared him to Messi, still questioned his decision, still treated PSG like a project, not a pinnacle. The escape had given him control, but it had also taken something. Barcelona had been a home. Paris felt like a spotlight, and Neymar, for all his skill, began to learn. Being the star is not the same as being fulfilled. Capital 10. Closing reflection. In the years that followed, he watched from afar as Messi lifted more trophies. Barcelona rebuilt, then collapsed, then changed again. Messi once celebrated a goal by forming the number 11 with his fingers, a quiet tribute, their bond unbroken. But Neymar stood alone now. He had chosen freedom and found not emptiness, but complexity. He had become the face, the centerpiece, the leader, and yet, at times, it seemed like he had lost the very thing that made him most alive, the joy of belonging. A tunnel at Parc des Princes. Neymar walks through it, boots in hand, floodlights above him. The stands echo his name, but he doesn't look up. He pauses at the edge of the field, takes a breath, not of relief, but reflection. He is free now, finally, but freedom, he knows, is heavier than it looks. Kingdom of Glass. There are kingdoms built on strength, and there are kingdoms built on light. Neymar's in Paris was made of brilliance, breathtaking, dazzling, uncontainable. But brilliance, for all its beauty, is fragile. This was the promise he chased, to lead his own team, to be the sun in someone else's sky. And for a while, he was. But in the years that followed, his kingdom shimmered like glass, sharp, reflective, and always one step from breaking. The mirage of dominance. From the outside, it looked like success. Ligue 1 titles came year after year. Neymar's highlights trended weekly. Elastico turns, Rabonas, outside the boot passes. His statistics remained elite when fit. Goals, assists, chances created. He averaged a goal involvement every 76 minutes across his first 3 seasons. His chemistry with Mbappe in transition was lethal. But to the wider football world, it didn't matter. Ligue 1 was framed as a playground, a league too easy, too soft, too invisible. Critics dismissed his performances as expected. For every wonder goal against Bordeaux or Nice came the question, but where is he in March, in April? And slowly, perception began to separate Neymar from his numbers. He was still dazzling, but the world stopped watching. 2. A body that betrays. Injury is cruelest when it's predictable. And for Neymar, the pattern became painfully familiar. February 2018, fractured metatarsal, missed UCL versus Real Madrid. January 2019, same foot, same injury, missed UCL versus Manchester United. February 2021, adductor strain, missed UCL versus Barcelona. March 2023. Ankle ligament tear. Surgery. Ruled out for season. The timeline was damning. Always before the knockout stages. Always when PSG needed him most. Brazilian fans noticed it too, especially during the Copa America cycles. He missed 2019 entirely through injury. By 2021, doubts had hardened into frustration. His body, once a weapon of improvisation, became an unpredictable liability. And Neymar, once irrepressibly joyful, began to speak differently in interviews. "I don't know if I have the strength for much more football," he said in 2021. He wasn't complaining, he was tired. The 2020 Champions League final run. For one fleeting summer, everything came together. The pandemic season had restructured the Champions League into single-leg ties. PSG entered the knockout rounds with something rare, momentum, and a healthy Neymar. In the quarterfinals, they faced Atalanta, a fearless, high-scoring side from Italy. For most of the match, PSG looked stunned. They trailed 1-0 into the 90th minute. The dream looked ready to die again. But Neymar had other plans. He didn't score, but he was everywhere. Drifting left, bursting central, demanding the ball, breaking lines. In the 90th minute, he played the pass that led to the equalizer. In the 93rd, another flick, another touch. PSG won. 2 assists, 1 salvation. In the semifinals versus Leipzig, Neymar was sublime, dancing past defenders, pulling strings with Di Maria, striking the post from impossible angles. PSG won 3-0, and for the first time in history, Neymar had led his team to a Champions League final without Messi. It was the very thing he had left Barcelona to do. In the final against Bayern Munich, Neymar carried a nation's weight. But it wasn't enough. PSG lost 1-0, a single goal from Kingsley Coman. Neymar had one clear chance, a close-range strike saved by Manuel Neuer. At full time, he dropped to his knees. Jersey over his face, tears fell. This was his moment. This was supposed to be the moment, and it slipped away like mist. 4. The Mbappé shift. As the seasons passed, the spotlight subtly shifted. Kylian Mbappé, 6 years Neymar's junior, began to rise not just in form, but in status. He became the face of French football, the new poster boy of PSG, the man the club was now building around. Neymar's place, once secure, began to feel negotiated. On the pitch, the signs were small, but visible. Mbappé gesturing in frustration when Neymar slowed counterattacks. Neymar rolling eyes when passes didn't come back. Moments of brilliance followed by cold acknowledgments. The media fueled the tension. In 2022, Mbappé signed a historic contract renewal, one that reportedly gave him influence over club direction, transfers, and sporting decisions. He became, in effect, more powerful than any player in PSG history. And Neymar? He was still elite, still creative, still brilliant, but no longer untouchable. The team's marketing centered on Mbappé, the tactics tilted towards him, and Neymar, once the project, had become a piece. From the outside, it looked like coexistence, but inside, something had cracked. Vive. Relationship with a club sours. PSG's board, especially sporting director Luis Campos, began to question Neymar's reliability, his injuries, his off field visibility, his massive salary. Behind closed doors, the club explored transfer options. In 2022, they floated Neymar's name to European clubs, but no one came. Not at that wage, not with that injury record. And Neymar heard the silence. He wasn't angry, he was disappointed. Once the crown jewel, he was now a burden on the books. The player they couldn't sell, the contract they couldn't offload. And so he stayed. But the bond had frayed. The warmth of his presentation, the dream of his arrival, it now felt distant, thin, like a banner still hanging in an empty room. Return to Brazil, and the weight of legacy. With PSG slipping from his fingers, Neymar turned once again to the Seleção, the 2019 Copa America, hosted in Brazil, was supposed to be his redemption arc, but he never made it. An ankle injury ruled him out weeks before the tournament. Brazil went on to win the title, their first in 12 years, without him. It was a victory, yes, but also a reminder they didn't need him. In 2021, Neymar returned for Copa America, determined, fit, focused. He carried Brazil to the final, but destiny had other plans. In Maracanã, against Messi's Argentina, Neymar fought but failed. Argentina won 1-0. At full time, Neymar collapsed. Messi found him, embraced him, whispered something only the two would ever know. The photo of them, arm in arm, one broken, one fulfilled, went viral. For Messi, it was vindication. For Neymar, it was another wound. In early 2023, Neymar suffered another ankle injury. This one required surgery. He was ruled out for the remainder of the season. The tone this time was different. He posted photos from the hospital, videos of his swollen foot, but the captions weren't hopeful. They were tired. Again, he wrote, no words. In interviews, he sounded weary. I've suffered a lot with injuries. I'm tired. I've done so much. I don't know how much is left. The football world began to speculate. Was this it? Was the boy wonder finally breaking? And then came the rupture. In March, PSG Ultras gathered outside Neymar's home, chanting for him to leave the club. The footage was jarring, masked fans shouting insults, demanding his exit. It wasn't just rejection, it was humiliation. The boy who came to build was now being pushed out of his own palace. Neymar didn't respond, but those close to him said the message was received. This wasn't his kingdom anymore. 8. Glass Kingdom cracks. As the 2023 season faded, so too did Neymar's role. Mbappe remained central. Messi too, despite his own cold farewell. Neymar was injured, sidelined, silent. PSG won the league again, but the celebrations were muted. The club, once built around Neymar's charisma, now looked past him, toward youth, toward marketability, toward Mbappe. And Neymar, he sat on the bench in street clothes, clapped for teammates, smiled when the cameras turned, but the fire had cooled. Closing image. In the empty tunnel of Parc des Princes, after a summer rain, a boot lies on its side, scuffed leather, torn lace, worn. Neymar once walked this corridor as a king. Now it's just a hallway. The echoes are still there, dribbles, laughter, goals, tears, but they belong to the past. He wasn't shattered, just unfinished. The green and gold. Brazil is more than a team. It is a dream stitched in gold, a myth draped in yellow, a symbol that weighs more than any shirt should. And for Neymar da Silva Santos Jr., the green and gold were not just colors, they were inheritance, expectation, burden. From the moment he put on the jersey, he carried not just a nation's hope, but its memory. Baptism of a prodigy. In 2010, as Brazil prepared for the World Cup in South Africa, fans were already chanting Neymar's name. He was 18, dazzling at Santos, scoring goals that made the country believe they had found their next hero. But Dunga, then the national team coach, left him out of the final squad. The decision sparked national debate. How could they ignore the most exciting teenager in the country? When Brazil crashed out in the quarterfinals, the public didn't blame the team. They blamed the omission. They turned to Neymar. In August that year, he made his debut against the United States, wore the number 11, scored within 28 minutes. It wasn't just a goal, it was an arrival. The Olympic burden. In 2012, Brazil sent Neymar to the London Olympics, chasing a title they had never won, Olympic gold. It was more than a tournament, it was a national itch. Neymar led the team to the final, scoring 3 goals along the way. But in the final against Mexico, Brazil faltered. Neymar struggled to break through. The team lost 2-1. The backlash was swift. Though Neymar was Brazil's top scorer, critics accused him of showboating, of caring more for flair than result. It was his first taste of what it meant to wear the yellow shirt in defeat. 3. The 2013 Confederations Cup. A year later, Brazil hosted the Confederations Cup, the dress rehearsal for the 2014 World Cup. This time, Neymar delivered. He scored against Italy, Uruguay, and a thunderbolt against Spain in the final. Brazil beat the reigning world champions 3 nights at the Maracana. The crowd sang. The country believed. Neymar was named Player of the Tournament. He looked unstoppable. The message was clear. The World Cup was coming home, and Neymar would lead it. The 2014 World Cup. A nation on his back. No player faced more pressure at a home World Cup since Pelé in 1970. Neymar was everywhere, in commercials, on jerseys, in songs sung by children in the streets. And for the first 4 games, he carried Brazil with grace. He scored twice against Croatia, once against Cameroon, and converted a decisive penalty in the shootout win over Chile. He wasn't just performing, he was transcending. But in the quarterfinal versus Colombia, on July 4th, the dream broke. In the 88th minute, Colombian defender Juan Camilo Zuniga charged into Neymar's lower back with a raised knee. Neymar collapsed. Not in theater, not in exaggeration, in real, immobilizing pain. He didn't get up, stretchered off in tears. He was rushed to a hospital in Fortaleza. Scans revealed a fractured vertebra. Doctors told him, if the blow had landed just 2 centimeters lower, you could have been paralyzed. The World Cup would continue, but Neymar's would not. He watched the 7-1 humiliation against Germany from home, helpless. Brazil collapsed, tactically, emotionally, spiritually. In post-match interviews, Neymar cried. He said he would have traded anything to be on the pitch, but perhaps even he could not have stopped what happened that day. It wasn't just a loss, it was a national trauma, and his absence became its symbol. 5. The Olympic Redemption, 2016. 2 years later, Brazil hosted the 2016 Olympic Games in Rio de Janeiro. Once again, Neymar returned. Older, stronger, determined. This time he was made captain. In the final, against Germany, in the same Maracanã that had seen so many ghosts, Neymar led with fire. He scored a stunning free kick in regulation. But the match finished 1-1, penalties. As the shootout reached its climax, Neymar stepped up to take the final kick. Silence in the stadium, a nation holding its breath. He converted. The stadium erupted. Neymar fell to his knees, sobbing uncontrollably. Brazil had won its first Olympic gold medal in football. It wasn't the World Cup, but it was something sacred. And for a moment, Neymar had silenced every critic. The 2018 World Cup. Promise and parody. In Russia, Neymar returned as Brazil's brightest hope. He was fully fit, fresh off an impressive domestic season with PSG. He scored against Costa Rica, assisted against Mexico. But something was off. For all his talent, the spotlight began to turn harsh. Every foul led to a dramatic roll, every tackle to exaggerated agony. By the time Brazil reached the quarterfinals, the internet had turned. Neymar became a meme, a punchline. In the loss to Belgium, he was mostly contained. He attempted late heroics, but the result stood. And for the first time, criticism of Neymar was not just harsh, it was mocking. He left Russia bruised, not just in body, but in brand. 7. The 2021 Copa America. In 2021, COVID reshuffled everything. Originally scheduled to be hosted jointly by Argentina and Colombia, the tournament was moved entirely to Brazil. Neymar was again the face, this time more mature, more grounded, more aware. He performed brilliantly. Assists, goals, leadership. Brazil reached the final, and fate wrote its cruelest script. Argentina, Messi, the Maracanã. Neymar played with urgency, but couldn't break through. Argentina won 1-0, and Messi lifted his first major international trophy. After the whistle, Neymar collapsed. He didn't run to the locker room. He stayed. And when Messi found him, the two embraced. Tears on both sides, mutual respect, shared history. The image of Neymar in Messi's arms, crying, smiling, broken, became iconic. It was sport at its rawest. And for Neymar, another final lost. But what made that loss so haunting wasn't just the scoreline. It was the symbolism. Neymar had given everything across that tournament. Assists, defensive runs, emotional leadership. And still, the script gave its glory to someone else. His friend, his teammate, his rival. After the embrace with Messi, Neymar sat alone for a long time. not sulking, but processing. The weight of another almost, another final that slipped, another narrative that cast him as the tragic figure. The media called the image iconic, fans called it beautiful. But for Neymar, it was just pain, raw and quiet. Later, he would say the defeat hurt more than anything since 2014. That night, he didn't speak to many, just texted his father. I tried. Because sometimes trying is all he had left. 3. World Cup 2022, the final act. The tournament in Qatar may well be Neymar's last. He entered it fighting injuries, doubts, and the weight of his nation once again. In the group stage, he injured his ankle versus Serbia and missed 2 games. He returned for the round of 16 versus South Korea, scoring a composed penalty in a 4-1 win. Then came the quarterfinal versus Croatia. Tied 0-0 into extra time, Neymar picked up the ball near midfield in the 105th minute. He darted forward, played a 1-2, another, then slalomed past the keeper and smashed the ball into the roof of the net. It was genius. His 77th goal for Brazil, tying Pelé's official record. But then, heartbreak. Croatia equalized in the 117th minute. Brazil lost in penalties. And across Brazil, the silence was deafening. The dream had unraveled again, too soon, too cruelly. And for Neymar, the wound wasn't just sporting, it was personal. He had given everything, his body, his spirit, his magic, and still it hadn't been enough. In the locker room, he didn't speak. Teammates tried, gently, to console him. But Neymar sat frozen, jersey clutched in his hands, staring at the floor like it held answers. Outside, fans cried. Some lit candles near murals of his face. Others whispered that fate had betrayed them again. This wasn't just a match lost, it was a pattern repeating, a cycle of brilliance undone by inches. And Neymar, as always, stood at its center, loved, blamed, exalted, and burdened. By morning, talk had shifted. Would he retire from the Seleção? Was this the last image Brazil would see of its number 10, collapsed in disbelief, alone on the pitch, the camera unable to look away? No one knew, least of all Neymar. Neymar never got to take one. He was scheduled 5th, and the match ended before his turn. When it was over, Neymar fell to the ground, face buried, shoulders shaking. He remained on the pitch long after the final whistle, alone. Later, he said, "I think this was my last World Cup. I don't know if I have the strength to keep going." It felt like a curtain call, not from lack of love, but from too much pain. Legacy in yellow. In 2023, Neymar officially surpassed Pelé as Brazil's all-time top scorer in FIFA-recognized matches. He had scored more goals in the yellow shirt than anyone in history. And yet, no World Cup, no Copa America, no closure. To some, he is a legend. To others, a missed opportunity. A player who gave everything and still walked away empty. But what can't be denied is this. He wore the shirt not with arrogance, but with emotion. He cried with it, bled with it, broke under it. The number 10 of Brazil is not just a number, it is a crown and a crucifix, and Neymar bore both. In a quiet dressing room, Neymar sits alone, the yellow number 10 laid across his lap, scuffed boots below, sweat drying on his brow. He has scored more than anyone, but the shirt still feels heavy. The throne never claimed. Every era has its kings, and in football's most gilded age, two names ruled without question: Messi, Ronaldo. For more than a decade, they stood above the rest, not just as players, but as symbols of excellence, of obsession, of greatness measured in goals, trophies, and time. But beneath them, for a brief electric moment, another name burned bright: Neymar da Silva Santos Jr. He was not a prince waiting to inherit. He was a storm, a smile wrapped in fire, the most naturally gifted player of his generation, born not to follow, but to change the story. And yet, when the history of this era is written, it reads not as a trinity, but a rivalry. Two gods, one throne. Neymar was always third. A golden generation apart. Neymar was born in 1992, just a few years behind Lionel Messi, 1987, and Cristiano Ronaldo, 1985. He arrived at the elite level as Messi was already reshaping the idea of footballing genius, and Ronaldo was rewriting the limits of physical supremacy. By the time Neymar reached Europe in 2013, the duopoly had calcified. 5 Ballon d'Ors for Messi, 4 for Ronaldo. A new era wasn't beginning, it was already entrenched. Neymar didn't join a race. He walked into a monument already carved in stone. But the world couldn't help but ask, could he be next? 2. The Messi magnetism. When Neymar arrived at Barcelona, he did so not as a rival to Messi, but as a disciple. They formed MSN with Luis Suarez, perhaps the most electric front three in football history. They won a treble in 2015, destroyed defenses, shared goals, assists, celebrations. But make no mistake, Barcelona was Messi's cathedral. Even at his best, Neymar orbited. He watched, he learned, he marveled. Their relationship was close. On and off the pitch, they laughed, embraced, conspired. Messi once said, "Neymar will be the best after me." But Neymar didn't want after. He wanted his own now. 3. The Ronaldo contrast. Ronaldo was never Neymar's teammate. He was the mirror across the divide. Where Neymar was improvisational, Ronaldo was methodical. Where Neymar danced, Ronaldo drilled. One was flair, the other force. Their Clasico meetings between 2013 and 2017 were seismic. In 2015, Neymar's goal at the Bernabeu helped Barcelona win 4-0, a match that shook Madrid. In the Champions League, they crossed timelines like stars in opposing orbits, but they were never true rivals. Ronaldo had already built his mythology. Neymar was still sketching his. And yet, in every headline, every fan debate, Neymar was cast as the next Messi or the next Ronaldo, but never just Neymar. 4. The Ballon d'Or cage. More than any trophy, the Ballon d'Or became the symbol of Neymar's chase. He finished third in 2015, behind Messi and Ronaldo. That year, he had won a treble, scored 39 goals, lit up Europe. But Messi reclaimed the crown with his fifth Ballon d'Or. Neymar smiled in photos, clapped politely. But inside, he must have wondered, what more do I have to do? In 2017, he was third again, this time behind Ronaldo and Messi. That season, he had led Barcelona's 6-1 PSG comeback, then transferred to Paris for a record fee. It was supposed to be the moment that broke the axis. Instead, it reinforced it. No matter how brilliant he played, Neymar couldn't pierce the armor. For over a decade, the Ballon d'Or stage remained the same. And for Neymar, it became not a goal, but a glass ceiling. For every season he dazzled, the spotlight still defaulted elsewhere. If he scored 30, they scored 40. If he danced, they dominated. No matter how high he rose, the narrative kept him looking up. There were years when the numbers aligned: goals, assists, trophies, and still, the stage remained out of reach. The voting ballots read the same names. The glow never quite landed on him. In private moments, teammates later recalled he would joke about it, shrug it off. But his eyes gave him away. He didn't want the crown for ego. He wanted it to validate the craft. Because Neymar didn't play to beat others. He played to express. And for a time, he believed the world would reward that purity. But the world wanted dominance. The third god, who never ascended. To many football purists, players, coaches, even legends, Neymar was the most naturally gifted of the three. Ronaldinho once said, "He's more complete than I was." Pelé called him the future of Brazilian football. Even opponents admitted his ceiling was unmeasurable. But ceilings are not crowns, and potential is not permanence. Neymar's journey was splintered by injury, interrupted by conflict, and shaped by choices. While Messi and Ronaldo built dynasties in Barcelona and Madrid, Neymar chased freedom in Paris. While Messi and Ronaldo fought through pain to play 50 to 60 games a season, Neymar often watched from the sideline in March. He wasn't absent for lack of talent. He was absent because greatness is as much about timing as it is about brilliance, and Neymar's timing, cruelly, never aligned. The reunion in Paris. In 2021, after years apart, Messi joined Neymar at PSG. The reunion was cinematic. Old friends, old sparks, back together, this time in Neymar's world. But time had changed everything. Messi was no longer the emperor of Europe. He was adjusting. Neymar, recovering from yet another injury, was no longer the project. Mbappe was. Their link-up was still beautiful. One-touch moves, laughs in training, glimpses of the old rhythm. But it was no longer magic, it was memory. The world didn't see gods returning. They saw echoes. Neymar had once left to escape Messi's shadow, and now that shadow had returned, not in threat, but in quiet irony. He had built a new kingdom, and still the old king had followed. Respect, rivalry, and reflection. Neymar never lashed out. He never attacked Messi or Ronaldo in interviews. He never claimed to be better. He praised Messi endlessly. "He's the best I've ever seen." He respected Ronaldo, though their relationship was more distant. They shook hands, smiled, nodded. But behind the humility, there was always ambition. You could see it in Neymar's face when he was asked, "Do you see yourself at their level?" He would smile, shrug, but the answer was always unfinished. He was close enough to touch their greatness, but never to wear it. And that proximity, is what made his story so different. Neymar wasn't chasing relevance, he was chasing immortality. The throne never claimed. Messi and Ronaldo built empires. Neymar built something else. He built moments, flickers, brilliance, laughter. He made the impossible look casual. He turned football into jazz. But he never ruled, never defined an era, never lifted the Ballon d'Or, never won the World Cup, never stepped clear of the shadows. And yet, he mattered. To children mimicking stepovers in Sao Paulo alleys, to fans who watched not for records but for joy, to players who envied his ease, his spontaneity, his fire. He may not have taken the throne, but he changed the room it stood in. Closing image. 3 jerseys hang on a white wall. Messi, 10, Ronaldo, 7, Neymar, 10. 2 framed in gold, 1 in glass. But beneath each name, one truth remains. They all made you feel. Where the applause faded. Not every end is a collapse. Sometimes, things just stop. Not with shouting, not with betrayal, but with stillness. That was Neymar's final chapter in Paris. Not a tragedy, not a triumph, just an unraveling so quiet you barely noticed it had begun. There was no scandal, no grand fall, only the slow disappearance of sound, from roars to whispers, from lights to flickers, from love to nothing. A. A star dims, slowly. From 2021 to 2023, Neymar featured in less than 50% of PSG's matches. Injury followed injury, ankle sprains, ligament tears, adductor strains. He would return for a few matches, shine, smile, then limp off, gone again. Each comeback was quieter, each absence longer. By the end, even the commentators stopped asking when he'd be back. They had simply stopped expecting him. The media, once obsessed, turned indifferent. No more breathless updates, just passing mentions. And so Neymar, once the sun around which PSG revolved, began to vanish, slowly, silently, like dusk. 2. The city moves on. PSG, like all empires, adapted. With Kylian Mbappe ascending and Messi now in the mix, the club's axis had shifted. Neymar was no longer the project, no longer the face, no longer the future. The boardroom pivoted to youth. The transfer strategy focused on sustainability and French identity. Neymar's name was no longer shouted in marketing meetings. His jersey sales declined. His image disappeared from the walls of the Parc des Princes gift shop. The city that had once embraced him as its crown jewel had moved on. 3. The collapse of connection. It didn't break all at once. It cracked. Then one day, it simply gave out. In May 2023, after another disappointing Champions League campaign, PSG Ultras gathered outside Neymar's home in Bougival, a quiet suburb west of Paris. They chanted, shouted, demanded he leave the club. Footage spread online, dozens of masked supporters, banging drums, screaming for Neymar to pack his bags. No violence, just venom. And Neymar? He didn't respond. No statement, no tweet, no video, just silence. This was not the boy who cried in front of fans, not the prince who danced with supporters. This was a man who had been emptied out. For years he had played through pain, had sacrificed his body, had tried, truly, to carry the weight. But the bond had eroded, not in hatred, in disconnection. He wasn't PSG's enemy. He was its ghost. 4. The invisible season. Ironically, 2022 to 2023 began brightly for Neymar. In the first 3 months, he was among the best players in Europe. Goals, assists, movement, chemistry with Messi rekindled. He looked focused, healthy, determined. And then, in February 2023, during a league match against Lille, it happened again. His right ankle gave out, a sprain initially, then a tear, then a full ligament reconstruction. He was ruled out for the rest of the season. No comeback, no final appearance, no goodbye. PSG would go on to win Ligue 1. There were celebrations, speeches, silverware. Neymar was not present, not even in the group photo. There was no official statement from him, no video of him cheering from home, no Instagram post holding the trophy, just absence. He wasn't missing, he was gone. Fee, the end without ending. That summer, the club made its position clear. New manager Luis Enrique offered no defense. Behind the scenes, PSG began calling around. Saudi Arabia, MLS, Turkish clubs, even a muted inquiry from Barcelona. And Neymar? He agreed to leave. No press conference, no letter to fans, no tribute video from the club. He signed with Al Hilal in Saudi Arabia in August 2023, a move reported more for its finances than its meaning. A 2-year deal, over 100 million euros per season, no ceremony, no farewell match, no stadium send-off. He had arrived in Paris to fireworks, to spotlights, to history. He left it like a shadow sliding off stage. And for all the silence, there was something uniquely haunting about the way it ended. Not in anger, not in scandal, but in detachment. His departure didn't feel like closure. It felt like vapor, a slow fade that offered no explanation, no anchor for memory. Even among his teammates, few spoke up. A handful of Instagram stories, one or two nostalgic posts from former colleagues, but nothing from the man himself. For years, Neymar had been a symbol of joy, of chaos, of unmatched flair. His presence was once so loud, so luminous, that it bent narratives toward him. And yet, in the city where he once lit up boulevards, there were no murals left. No chants, no whispers, just space. It wasn't failure that defined his Paris story. It was erasure. The slow, merciless kind, where noise becomes memory and memory becomes dust. What Paris became. By the numbers, Neymar's time at PSG was statistically elite. 173 appearances, 118 goals, 77 assists, 13 trophies, including 5 Ligue 1 titles. He delivered magic. The Elastico against Strasbourg, the volley against Red Star, the Champions League masterclass versus Atalanta. But he never won the Champions League, never claimed the Ballon d'Or, never made PSG his club. He was the club's most expensive player, but not its most remembered. When fans spoke of PSG in the 2020s, they spoke of Mbappe's rise, of Messi's arrival, of Tuchel versus Pochettino, of drama, not dynasty. Neymar had moments, but not the moment. In 2017, Neymar's transfer from Barcelona to PSG was a global earthquake. News stickers, front pages, think pieces. In 2023, his exit barely made a ripple. There was no goodbye post, no thank you video, no tearful final wave. Just a medical, a handshake, and a press release. Even PSG's official account offered little more than a paragraph. And the fans? Some were relieved, some were nostalgic. Most were indifferent. That was the real tragedy. Not that Neymar left, but that no one really noticed. An empty locker at the Parc des Princes. Inside, a folded number 10 jersey, clean, untouched. No confetti, no flowers, no thank you card. Just a space once filled by brilliance, now filled by silence. The heaviest shirt in the world. Some shirts are stitched with history. Some are dyed in blood or sweat or gold, and some carry the weight of a country. Brazil's number 10 is not a number. It's a myth, a crown without a throne, a song every child knows, even if they've never seen the pitch. When Neymar pulled it over his shoulders, he was not dressing for a game. He was stepping into a story, one worn by Pelé, blessed by Zico, set alight by Ronaldinho, worshipped, feared. To wear the 10 was to summon joy, but joy in Brazil is sacred, and sacred things are heavy. It more than a number. In most countries, numbers are practical. A striker wears 9, a keeper 1, a playmaker maybe 8 or 10. In Brazil, the number 10 is holy. Pelé turned it into a beacon. Garrincha gave it rhythm. Zico gave it intellect. Romario gave it menace. Ronaldinho gave it laughter. It's not given, it's inherited. And with it comes a silent oath. You will not just play well. You will dazzle. You will win. You will make us proud, even as we demand more than pride. 2. The inheritance. Neymar became Brazil's number 10 in 2013. At 21, young, wild, fearless. It was during the Confederations Cup, a symbolic return to joy after Olympic failure in 2012. He wore the number with freedom, danced past defenders, scored screamers, was named player of the tournament. He beat Spain, the reigning world champions, 3-0 in the Maracana. Brazil didn't just win, they believed again. The boy with the mohawk and a magician's touch had inherited the fire, and for a while, it looked like it fit. But fitting is not the same as holding, and joy, once expected, becomes debt. Pelé's shadow. Pelé never asked Neymar to be him, but the world did. He praised Neymar, embraced him, called him Brazil's future. When Neymar passed Pelé's official goal tally in 2023, the old king had already passed. There was no celebration, only a stat, an achievement with no parade. And that was the difference. Pelé was myth made man. He won 3 World Cups. His mistakes faded in film grain. His era moved slower. His genius was seen, not tweeted. Neymar lived under constant surveillance. And for all the joy he brought, he never escaped the echo. But Pelé did more. The fire and the smile. Before Neymar, there was Rivaldo, a left-footed hammer with eyes like steel. There was Ronaldinho, a samba sorcerer who made football into jazz. Neymar blended both. He could be ruthless, he could be whimsical. He could embarrass you with a nutmeg, then chip your keeper from 30 yards. But unlike his predecessors, Neymar lived in a world where joy was no longer enough. Ronaldinho smiled, Neymar smirked, and was scolded. Rivaldo roared. Neymar celebrated, and was mocked for his dance. The line between entertainer and egotist had blurred, and the number 10, once a license for expression, had become a courtroom. The burden of modernity. Neymar's world was faster, louder, harsher. He didn't just play football. He performed it under global judgment. His tattoos were dissected. His fashion was analyzed. His parties were weaponized. He was accused of being unserious, undisciplined, even when training harder than most. The Brazilian media oscillated between love and loathing. One week, he was their savior. The next, their shame. He couldn't win the Ballon d'Or, but he could trend worldwide for rolling on the grass. This was the new Brazil, still obsessed with the number 10, but no longer sure what it wanted from him. The loneliness of the jersey. When Brazil lost, Neymar was the first image on the screen. In 2014, he was stretchered off, fractured back, sobbing, before watching his team lose 7-1 from a hospital bed. In 2018, he was mocked for theatrics as Brazil crashed out to Belgium. In 2021, he wept as Messi lifted the Copa America at the Maracana. In 2022, he scored one of the greatest goals of his career and didn't even take a penalty as Brazil lost to Croatia. He was always alone in the aftermath. There was no Kaká, no Ronaldo, no Ronaldinho beside him. He was the poster, the target, the shoulder, and the sword. And eventually, he said so himself. I don't know if I have the strength to keep playing for Brazil. It wasn't a surrender. It was a confession of fatigue, of expectation, of carrying something too vast for one man. And that was the paradox. The shirt was never heavier than in Neymar's hands, not because he was unworthy, but because the world no longer allowed mystery. Pelé played in an age of myth. Neymar played in an age of metrics. Every step was tracked. Every frown became a headline. Every loss became an indictment. He wasn't just playing football. He was defending a lineage he never asked for, under spotlights that never dimmed. In Brazil, the number 10 had once meant magic. But by the time Neymar wore it, it meant measurement. Not did you make us dream, but did you deliver? And in a country that expects gods, even angels are doubted. He didn't just inherit a number, he inherited a standard, one set by ghosts and judged by millions who had never touched a pitch. And so he played with fire under his boots and doubt in his shadow. Number 7. Legacy in yellow gold. And yet, despite all of it, Neymar gave. He gave goals. Over 80 for Brazil, more than any player in history under FIFA's record. He gave assists, magic, highlights. He gave Olympic gold in 2016, breaking the curse. He gave the 2013 Confederations Cup when belief was low. He gave Brazil hope after the heartbreaks of 2010 and 2011. He took them to a Copa America final, to a World Cup quarterfinal with a broken back, to another with a torn ligament. He scored, he suffered, he tried, and yet the conversations always end the same. But he didn't win the World Cup, as if that were the only measure, as if carrying the world for a decade wasn't enough. But maybe that's the point. Maybe the number 10 doesn't reward effort, only victory. Closing image. A locker in Brasilia. A yellow jersey hangs on a hook. Number 10. Neymar. Drenched in sweat, soaked in light, frayed at the collar. It doesn't shine like it used to, but it's still sacred. Pelé wore it and became a god. Neymar wore it and became something else. Not a ghost, not a king, but a boy who dared to dance in a crown that never quite fit. And still, for a moment, he made it move like no one else. One last chance. Not every legend ends on a high. Some are left mid-sentence. Some walk off quietly. Some never get the ending they deserve. And some still have one chance left. For Neymar, the road to 2026 is not paved with certainty. It is paved with maybes, with what-ifs, with healing ligaments, fading spotlights, and a heart that still wants more. He has done enough to be remembered, but not enough to be fulfilled. And so the question rises like morning fog over a quiet training ground. Could there be one final chapter? One last dance, not to reclaim greatness, but to say goodbye on his own terms? 1. The final cycle begins. As of 2025, Neymar is recovering from one of the most serious injuries of his career. A torn ACL and meniscus, suffered just months after joining Al Hilal in Saudi Arabia. It wasn't just a setback, it was a warning. He is 33 years old now. By the time the 2026 World Cup begins, hosted by the United States, Canada, and Mexico, he will be 34. He will be older than Ronaldinho was when he retired, older than Pele was in his final tournament, and nursing a body that has weathered more collisions than celebrations. But technically, he is still eligible, still Brazil's number 10, if the manager chooses, still capable of brilliance, if the body allows. The door is not closed, but it creaks. 2. What remains? Neymar is no longer the sprinter who shredded defenses at Santos, no longer the whirlwind of 2015's MSN, no longer the elastic-legged trickster who embarrassed fullbacks for fun. But something remains. His vision is still there, the pass before the pass. His touch remains soft, impossible, decisive. His ability to slow the game down, to dictate the moment, still intact. In Saudi Arabia, he plays fewer matches, trains at a lower intensity, but it may prolong his career, protect what's left. And if he returns, his role may change. He wouldn't be the spearhead, he'd be the architect. A final form, not the boy who danced, but the man who guided. For all the joy Neymar brought, for all the goals and the flicks and the fire, his story still feels incomplete. There was no World Cup in 2014, injury. No Ballon d'Or in 2015, overshadowed. No Copa America win in 2021, Messi's night. No final penalty in 2022. The shootout ended before his turn. It's not failure, it's frustration. So many pages, no final line. And 2022 was supposed to be the ending. The goal versus Croatia was sublime. The tears afterward raw. The quote, "I don't know if I'll play again," sounded like a goodbye. But maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was a pause. A final World Cup could offer not a coronation, but a completion. He doesn't need to dominate. He doesn't need to start every game. Even being there, even lifting the trophy from the bench, would give his career something it has always lacked: peace. 4. The Ghost of 2014. Brazil's modern football story is haunted by the number 7, by the date July 8th, by the screams in Belo Horizonte. Neymar didn't play in the 7-1 loss to Germany, but he still carries it. He missed that game with a broken back, watched it from a hospital bed, unable to move. He cried afterward, not from pain, but from helplessness. The ghosts of that day have never truly left, and in many ways they shaped Neymar more than the goals did. 2026 won't be in Brazil. It won't carry the noise, the pressure, the national hysteria. It will be far in Los Angeles, Vancouver, Dallas, New York. A stage without ghosts, a new script. Maybe that's what he's needed all along. But beyond ghosts and injuries, there is something deeper that lingers. Neymar's relationship with Brazil, the nation, not the team, has always been a mirror of extremes. They loved him like a son, then scolded him like a stranger. They celebrated his flicks, then mocked his falls. They called him a savior, then accused him of betrayal. He was never just a player. He was a symbol they could not agree on. Some saw him as joy incarnate, others as indulgence in disguise. He once said, "I don't play to prove anything to anyone. I play because I love it." But love in Brazil is conditional, and applause fades faster than injury scars. As he considers one last return, it may not be about winning the fans back. It may simply be about meeting them and himself at peace, not with fireworks, but with understanding. Vinicius Jr., the Champions League conqueror. Rodrigo, the new assassin in white. Endrick, the teenage phenom already being called the next one. And Neymar? He could be the mentor, the wise one, the final note in a new symphony. There will be no Pele comparisons, no he must win or he has failed headlines. He could walk into the World Cup with less pressure than he's ever known. That freedom to play without needing to prove, to serve without needing to shine, might unlock the best version of who he has become. He would not be chasing ghosts, he'd be guiding youth, and in doing so, he might finally find the joy he once danced with. What if he doesn't make it? Of course, there is another possibility, that he doesn't make it, that his body refuses, that another injury breaks more than just bone, that the final call-up never comes. If that happens, Neymar's last image in the yellow jersey will remain, crying on the pitch in Qatar 2022 after Brazil's loss to Croatia, alone, undone. He didn't take a penalty, didn't get a moment to shape his fate, just a flash of brilliance, then heartbreak. If that's the last chapter, no one could call it unworthy, but it would be unfinished. No farewell match, no crowd singing his name, no closure, just a silent fade from the team he gave everything to. It's the cruel side of football, the sport that gives us gods, then forgets to write them endings. The circle and the fire. Pelé retired from international football at 30. Ronaldo won his redemptive World Cup at 30. Neymar will be 34 in 2026. But maybe it's not about age, maybe it never was. Maybe it's about fire, the kind that doesn't show up on injury reports, the kind that lives in silence, that waits. He has been the boy with the crown, the prince in Messi's court, the exile in Paris, the ghost in yellow. Now maybe, just maybe, he could be something else, the man who stayed, the elder who returned, the flame that refused to go out. A quiet hotel room in 2026. Curtains drawn. A bag at the foot of the bed. Neymar, older now, sits alone. On the table, a yellow number 10. He lifts it slowly, pulls it over his shoulders, exhales. This time it fits a little differently. Not a crown, not a burden, just a jersey, just a man, just a game, and maybe one last chance to finish the story right. numbers behind the magic. We do not fall in love with numbers. We fall in love with moments. But in the end, when the boots are hung, when the cheers fade, when memory begins to blur, we reach for numbers to explain what the eyes once knew. Neymar was an artist, but even artists leave behind data. Even magic has a footprint. This is that footprint, measured not in metals alone, but in patterns, arcs, ruptures, the full scope of what Neymar did and what he didn't. It is not the whole truth, but it is a vital piece of it. There is a tension in any attempt to quantify Neymar. He was a player of feeling, a flick of the ankle, a sudden pause, a joyful burst through chaos. To reduce that to digits feels sacrilegious. And yet numbers tell a different kind of story, a colder one perhaps, but one that speaks plainly when memory becomes fog. This chapter is not a ranking, it is not a plea, it is a reckoning. Here, laid bare, is what Neymar did, measured, counted, verified. Make of it what you will. Number 2. Club career totals, accurate to July 2025. Santos FC, 2009 to 2013. Appearances, 134. Goals, 70. Assists, 35. Trophies, Copa Libertadores, 2011. Copa do Brasil, 2010. Three-time Campeonato Paulista, 2010, 2011, 2012. Context. At Santos, Neymar was electric, the boy king of Brazilian football. By age 21, he had become South America's most luminous prospect. His solo goal versus Flamengo in 2011 won FIFA's Puskás Award. He left as Brazil's brightest export since Ronaldinho. FC Barcelona, 2013 to 2017. Appearances, 186. Goals, 105. Assists, 76. Trophies, 2 times La Liga, 2015, 2016. 3 times Copa del Rey, 2015, 2016, 2017. UEFA Champions League, 2015. FIFA Club World Cup, 2015. Spanish Super Cup, 2013. Highlights. Formed the legendary MSN trio with Messi and Suarez. Scored 39 goals in the 2014-15 treble-winning season. Played a vital role in Barcelona's 6-1 comeback versus PSG in 2017. 2 goals, 1 assist, won the decisive free kick. Context. Barcelona was where Neymar became world-class. He learned from Messi, competed with Ronaldo, and at times surpassed them both in spectacle. But the shadow was always there. He was brilliant, but not the star. Paris Saint-Germain, 2017 to 2023. Appearances, 173. Goals, 118. Assists, 77. Trophies, 5 times Ligue 1, 3 times Coupe de France, 2 times Coupe de la Ligue, 3 times Trophée des Champions. Notable performance. Champions League runner-up in 2019 to 20. Highlights: scored and assisted consistently, 0.68 goals per game. Best statistical season, 2017 to 18, with 28 goals in 30 games. Created more chances per 90 than any player in Europe, 2017 to 19 window. Context: he arrived as the most expensive player in history, €222 million, and left as one of football's most enigmatic figures. His numbers were elite, his influence undeniable. But the Champions League eluded him, and so did lasting myth. Al Hilal. Appearances: 5. Goals: 1. Assists: 2. Status: ruled out for most of 2023 to 24 with torn ACL and meniscus. Contract: expires in 2025 with club option for extension. Context: a move framed by critics as a retreat, but for Neymar, perhaps a respite. Time will tell if his story in Saudi Arabia has a second act. For now, it remains a footnote. 3. International career: Brazil. Caps: 128. Goals: 79, FIFA recognized. Assists: 56 plus. Debut: August 2010. Scored on debut versus USA. Major tournaments: 2011 Copa America, quarterfinals. 2014 World Cup, semifinal injury. 2015 Copa America, early exit. 2016 Olympics, gold medal, captain, winning penalty. 2018 World Cup, quarterfinals. 2019 Copa America, injured, did not participate. 2021 Copa America. Runner-up to Messi's Argentina. 2022 World Cup, quarterfinals, goal versus Croatia. Trophies with Brazil. FIFA Confederations Cup 2013, Best Player. Olympic Gold 2016, Captain winning penalty. South American Youth Championship 2011. Context: Neymar became Brazil's top scorer of all time, surpassing Pele's official record in 2023. His goal versus Croatia in 2022, weaving past 4 defenders and chipping the keeper, is considered one of the greatest goals in modern World Cup history. But no senior Copa America or World Cup title clouds the memory. Still, few wore the yellow with as much light. 4. Milestones and records. Youngest Brazilian to reach 50 goals, age 24. All-time leading scorer for Brazil, FIFA official, 79. Most assists in Brazil NT history, 56 plus. Most expensive transfer in football history, €222 million, Euros 2017. only Brazilian with over 100 goals for 2 European clubs. One of few players with over 300 club goals and 200 assists. Puskás Award winner 2011. Player of the tournament 2013 Confederations Cup. Fastest player to reach 100 goal contributions for Brazil. The statistical curve, prime versus decline. Peak years, statistically. 2012, Santos, 43 goals in 47 games. 2015, Barcelona, 39 goals, 11 assists. 2017-2019, PSG, averaged 25 plus goals per season despite injuries. Decline. From 2019 onwards, injuries limited availability. Missed 101 club matches in 5 seasons at PSG. Played only 56 of possible matches between 2020-2023. Surgery in 2018, 2019, 2023. Context. Neymar's talent never dimmed. His body simply couldn't carry it forever. His technical peak extended into his 30s, but physical decline was steep post-2020. Neymar versus his era. Contextual lens, Neymar was more creative per 90 than both Messi and Ronaldo during their peaks. Per FBref data, shot creating actions, take-ons, progressive passes. His dribble success rate remains one of the highest recorded. His numbers reflect greatness, but not dominance. Yet even as the curve dipped, one truth remained steady. He made things happen. When fit, Neymar didn't just contribute, he transformed matches. His presence warped defenses. His runs pulled entire backlines. His creativity opened doors no one else even saw. And for Brazil, even late in his career, he was still the first-name defender circled, still the pulse of the attack, still the difference between despair and hope. His career, when charted, is not a straight line. It's a sine wave, full of peaks, valleys, injuries, revivals. But in that irregularity lies something rare, human brilliance. Not cold dominance, but fragile magic. And maybe that's the most honest legacy of all. What the numbers can't show. No stat can measure what Neymar felt like to watch. There is no metric for joy, for grace, for defiance. His nutmegs do not exist in databases. His feints are not recorded in record books. The goosebumps after a sombrero flick, untracked. Statistics tell us he was brilliant, but they cannot explain why a child in Thailand cried watching him dribble, or why a father in Brazil saw echoes of 1970 when Neymar scored. He was never just productive, he was performative in the best sense. And for all the data, some things live only in the blood. Closing reflection, he was not the best ever. He did not break all the records. He did not build a dynasty. But look closer. He scored more than Zico, created more than Rivaldo, danced longer than Ronaldinho, surpassed Pelé in goals, and still left us wanting more. His numbers are enough to earn respect, but they were never the point. He was the spark, the brush stroke, the firework at midnight, gone in a second, but unforgettable in its glow. Neymar was not football's god. He was its fleeting genius. And the numbers? They prove he was real. The circle returns. Some journeys end not in triumph, not in tragedy, but in return. In the twilight of Neymar's career, after the noise of Paris, after the silence of Saudi Arabia, after the world had moved on, there came a whisper, not from Europe, not from money, but from memory. And he answered it, a whisper from the shore. The year was 2024. Neymar was healing again. A torn ACL had sidelined him. Rumors circled. Retirement. MLS. Maybe even staying put. But in the quiet, Santos called. Not with a contract, with a feeling, with old voices and older streets, with grainy footage from 2010, with children wearing number 11 shirts in alleyways he once ruled. And something in Neymar stirred, not ambition, not legacy, but longing. 2. Home is a shape you never forget. Santos wasn't the same club, not the same team that had lifted the Copa Libertadores, not the same fortress where Robinho had danced or Pelé had ruled. But the town hadn't changed. The bakery still sold pão de queijo on the corner. The fans still sang behind the goal. The training ground still smelled like sea salt and summer. And Neymar? He walked through the gates like he'd never left, not as a prodigy, not as a prince, just as a man, older now, with stubble on his chin and scars on his knees. He looked around not for cameras, but for ghosts, and he found them. The return match. It wasn't grand. No fireworks, no world tour, no packed Maracana. Just a preseason friendly against a provincial side. Santos in white, Neymar in number 10 again. The crowd swelled, of course. The world watched, if only for a moment. And when he touched the ball, just once, just gently, the stadium breathed in. Then he flicked it past a defender, then curled a pass through two midfielders, then chipped the keeper from 25 yards. It didn't count. He was offside, but no one cared. He was home. 4. Why he came back. People asked, why return? The money? No. The trophies? No. The competition? Not even close. He came back because the world outside had grown cold, because Europe had judged him, and Saudi Arabia had paid him, but only Santos had loved him. Here, he was not a brand, not a statistic, not a meme. He was just Ney, the boy who once ran barefoot to training, the kid who kissed his mother's hands before kickoff, the player who played not to win, but to dance. 4. More mentor than magician. This was not the Neymar of old. He no longer sprinted past 3 defenders. He didn't play every match. He missed as many as he made. But when he played, he guided. He coached with gestures. He calmed the young winger on the touchline. He placed the ball for a 19-year-old and said, "Take the penalty." He wasn't the star, he was the stage. And Santos, for the first time in years, began to believe again. 6. the people's applause. Something strange happened in those weeks. Brazil forgave him. The same fans who had booed him at the Maracanã, who had mocked his injuries, who had demanded more, now cheered him for 10-yard passes. They saw him limping and still smiling, saw him nutmeg a defender, then hold his hamstring, saw him laugh after a missed shot. He was broken, but trying, and in that trying, they saw something greater than talent. They saw courage. 7. A goodbye disguised as a hello. There was no press release saying it was his final season, no interview confirming retirement, but everyone knew. This wasn't a new beginning, it was a soft landing, a final bow, dressed in white and black, a player no longer fighting for legacy, but for closure. He didn't chase trophies, he chased peace. He had played for money, played for pride, played for gold. Now, he was just playing for love. 8. The echo of the first time. In one match, late in the season, Neymar scored a free kick. Not powerful, not dramatic, just perfectly curled into the top corner. And for a moment, the camera angle, the celebration, the shirt flapping in the breeze, it felt like 2011, like nothing had changed, like the boy with the mohawk had never left. But then, he jogged back slowly, touched his knee, and smiled to the bench, because everything had changed. He had gone from São Vicente to Barcelona, from PSG to Riyadh, from the heights of world football to the quiet of home. Not every player returns. Not every player can return. But Neymar did, and in doing so, he rewrote the ending. Not with fireworks, but with forgiveness. Not with dominance, but with dignity. Closing image. The Villa Belmiro Stadium, late at night. The crowd has gone, the lights dimmed. One figure remains, standing near midfield. Neymar, alone, looking up at the stands. He raises his hand, not in triumph, not in farewell, just in thanks. Then he walks off, slowly, quietly, and behind him, the echo of drums fades into the breeze. Echoes in the grass. Long after the lights go out, long after the goals are counted, the trophies polished, the jerseys framed, something still lingers. A sound, a shimmer, a memory not tied to numbers. This is what Neymar left behind. Not dominance, not dynasties, but echoes. The echo of laughter after a nutmeg, the gasp after a backheel, the crowd rising not for a goal, but for a moment of joy so pure it made time pause. This is not a chapter of summary. It is a eulogy for a feeling. More than the scoreline. In a sport obsessed with victory, Neymar gave us something rarer, delight. His name will not be etched beside the World Cup's greatest champions. He will not be held in the same breath as Messi or Ronaldo by the record keepers. But greatness is not only measured in medals. Sometimes it is measured in moments. The step-overs, the rainbow flicks, the chipped penalties, the grin. He played not as a product, but as poetry. And for all the critiques, for all the collapses, he made people feel. That is legacy, not what you win, but what you leave behind in others. 2. the artist in an age of efficiency. Modern football evolved around systems, XG maps, gegenpressing, compact blocks, possession percentages. Coaches became scientists, matches became data sets. In that world, Neymar was chaos. Beautiful, reckless, expressive chaos. He played with the rhythm of the street. Every touch said, "This game is mine. This moment is art." He did things that didn't make sense because they didn't need to. He didn't just try to beat you, he tried to humiliate you, not out of cruelty, but out of creativity. He wasn't there to execute a plan, he was there to write a verse. And for all the tactical minds who sighed, for all the purists who frowned, there was a deeper truth beneath it. The game was more alive when Neymar touched the ball. Beauty without apology. He never dimmed his flame, even when the cameras mocked his dives, even when the media ridiculed his hair, his lifestyle, his entourage, even when the analysts reduced him to risk and reward. He kept playing with wonder, with swagger, with audacity. His stepovers weren't performative, they were inherited from the concrete courts of São Vicente, from the ghosts of Ronaldinho and Denilson. He wore his joy like armor. And when they told him to be serious, to conform, to simplify, he smiled and dribbled again. He didn't want to play football. He wanted to feel football, to make it sing, to remind us that this game, at its core, was a dance. 4. The contradiction. But for all the joy he created, he was never free of contradiction. Neymar was a paradox, a boy with a child's heart and a millionaire's life, a man who loved the ball but grew tired of the game, a national hero and a national scapegoat, worshipped for his talent, criticized for his success. He was as fragile as he was fearless, injury prone, yes, but also courage prone. He took on defenders no one else dared. He carried weight no one else wanted. And yet, sometimes, he fell too easily. Sometimes he vanished in moments that begged for defiance. That's what made him human, not the perfection, but the imbalance. He wasn't a statue, he was a storm, brilliant, unstable, real. 5. What he gave. He gave hope. After Brazil's post-2010 identity crisis, he gave style in an era of minimalism. He gave goals, over 400 across his club and international career. He gave gold in Rio when the Maracana trembled. He gave tears, honest ones, not PR ones. He gave a generation of Brazilian kids the belief that joy still had a place in the modern game. He didn't bring back Pele's legacy. He didn't replace Ronaldinho. He created his own shape, not symmetrical, but unforgettable. And perhaps that was his real gift. Not what he gave us, but what he gave himself. The freedom to be flawed, to be luminous one day, lost the next, to risk ridicule in pursuit of expression. In a world obsessed with control, with image, with outcomes, he was the anomaly. He was chaos, smiling. And in that chaos, there was something rare, honesty. Because Neymar never pretended to be a model of perfection. He was a performer, not a politician, a spirit, not a system. And though he carried the weight of a myth, he still played like someone chasing a feeling, not a legacy. That, too, is a kind of greatness. What remains in the grass. And now, as the twilight deepens, as the matches grow fewer, what remains? Not just highlights, but habits. In the alleys of Rio, A boy tries an outside flick. In a dusty pitch in Nairobi, a teenager rolls the ball under his foot 3 times before passing. In a European youth academy, a coach sighs as his winger dribbles when he should have passed and secretly smiles. That's Neymar, not in the result, but in the rhythm. He is the pause before the trick, the smile before the run, the silence before the roar. He may retire, he may vanish from headlines, but in the grass, he remains. Every field where a player dares to improvise, to entertain, to dance, he is there. Closing image. A field, empty, golden hour, no crowd, no lines, just open space. A single ball rolls gently in the breeze. No one kicks it, not yet. But somewhere, a child watches an old clip, tries the move, falls, laughs, tries again. Neymar is not there, but the grass remembers, the game remembers, and somewhere between joy and sorrow, his echo plays on. Because some players give you trophies, some give you numbers, and a few, a precious few, give you feeling. They play not to win, but to remind us why we ever cared about the game in the first place. He was lightning in a bottle, a son of Brazil, a boy who never became a god, and somehow that made him more human, more real, more unforgettable. He didn't rewrite history. He didn't wear the crown. But for a moment, he made the world believe in magic again. And sometimes, that echo lasts longer than the glory. Thank you for listening. And wherever you are, may you drift off with the sound of the game still whispering through the grass.